Buongiorno. Good morning. Thanks for being here in class and online. I see that we have much more people online than in class. We start the seminar with Juliet Roger. The title is Female Genital Modification Laws in Australian, the Racism and Psychosis of Contradictory Practices Toward Migrants. And this seminar is part of the master degree in criminology and the seminars that we organize every year, but is also part of the project Effetto Farfalla. And we invited Professor Juliet Roger to present her work, and me, Pierluigi Musarò, and the Professoressa Raffaella Sette, who is here with us. We will discuss with Juliet at the end. And we are very happy to have Juliet Roger here because she's an associate professor in criminology, and we should say social science, in the School of Political Science at the University of Melbourne in Australia. And she previously taught in University of Melbourne, but in law school, where she completed her PhD on fantasies of female circumcision, flesh, law, and freedom through psychoanalysis. So it's interesting because Professor Rogers, before being professor of criminology, she was a psychoanalyst. She's an expert of Lacanian psychoanalysis and an expert in trauma. And she spent, I think, a couple of years in Bologna a few years ago. So she has also a good Italian, but she preferred to speak English, and we accept it. Just to say that Julie has been as visiting fellow at the European University Institute in Italy, at Yale Law School in the US. She worked also at the University of Cape Town Law School in South Africa, and in many other universities, including the University of Bologna. So I'm very happy because she will talk about the same topic that we were talking last week with Serena and Valentina, but I think from a different perspective, and also from a different part of the world, which I think is also interesting to enlarge our horizon. I will leave the floor and the microphone to Juliet, who will present her talk. So I will put here the slide. You will manage it? Okay. Thanks for being here, Juliet.
Thank you. Thank you, Pierluigi. Thank you for inviting me. In Australia, we say first that we acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land, the land of Aboriginal people. This is not a common practice in Europe, so it is difficult for me to think about where I come from and think about where I am working on without thinking about who was here before. So when I think about this topic, though, this work, I also think about how we live with the people that we are not. That is in Australia, because we live beside Indigenous people.
We just try to see if it's better with the microphone, but I'm scared that it's not good for the people at home.
Yeah.
Let's try.
Also my accent.
Maybe
I can speak louder.
Okay, but I think it helped a little bit.
Puoi sentirmi?
Ok.
Potete? Mi dispiace per mia lingua. Secondo me è meglio per me parlare in inglese, perché il mio italiano fa schifo. Ho dimenticato tanto, mi dispiace. Okay, so but I have translated some things, so because some things are very particular to this topic. Okay, you can hear me here? You can understand my accent?
Yes.
Okay, you're used to American accents. This is not that. Okay, so the reasons I work on this topic is because of thinking about difference in Australia because we must think, how do we have law, which is a law for Western British people, and how do we live with law which was from Indigenous people? Two different things. Sometimes these different things, these different laws are impossible. So this work is about female circumcision, but it is also about how we think about difference, how we think about different things that we do not understand, and different things that sometimes we believe we understand or sometimes we believe are wrong without knowing a lot about them. So, is it okay? How am I going? This my English is okay? If you miss anything, just say, what? Or, okay. So, when we talk about this practice, I'm always thinking about these two things together. So when I work on the issue, the topic of female circumcision, I am always thinking about what I do not understand. But I'm also thinking about two laws together. Because I know some people believe it is not, female circumcision is not a practice of law, but many cultures practice this as law, as a practice of law. So you have two types of law that must somehow work together. Yeah? Okay. So I've been working on this for 25 years, fascination with the genitals of other people. But this case, there is a case I want to talk to you about, and I will speak of three things. First, this case, this law case in Australia, which was about the first prosecution of female circumcision in Australia. This case was very long. And then I will talk about the way the law was created in Australia for this prosecution to happen. And then I will talk about how we think about other practices, female genital cosmetic surgery, labiaplasty, and also gender affirmation surgery, so transitioning trans surgeries. Because how do we think about when it is good to cut the genitals and when it is not? Okay. So my perspective is a bit different from last week because some of the things that we think about female circumcision, I think, cannot be the idea of just simply female genital mutilation. We must think about the different practices. And I know there was a comment last week, I think, that was said that there is no mild form. Come on, DJ. Lieve. There is no lieve, forma lieve per questa pratica. You said it's practice? Pratica. Okay. So, but, vedremo. Okay. Wait. Suspend your belief. Because I want to start with a question for you. Who thinks in this, I'm only asking the room because I can't see the screen, but in the room, who thinks that female genital mutilation is bad? Avete capito la mia domanda? Chi pensate?
Quanti pensano che le mutilazioni genitali femminili siano una cosa brutta, cattiva?
Brutta. Puoi fare questo?
Yes, sì? Raise your hand.
Sì.
There are some faces that say maybe.
Yeah.
But most of you say.
Most of you say
bad.
Yes, it's bad.
What about the chat? Try to have a look at the chat.
Try to have a look at the chat. You say. I only work in Mac, so.
Yeah, one or the other. You got
this
that.
One?
Yes.
No.
Try to go chat.
It's
yeah,
it's Italian and Microsoft. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, provate a partecipare anche dalla chat if you can.
It's okay. Most of the room thinks that this is bad. Do you think, un'altra domanda, do you think it is always bad.
It is bad.
It is bad.
There is a
For me, it's bad. See? Every practice. Now you are not so sure? Okay. Who thinks male circumcision? Come si dice? Circumcismo? Circumcisione di maschi? Sempre? Sempre cattivo? Chi pensa?
La circoncisione maschile.
No?
It's something cultural.
That's cultural, but not the other one.
Le donne devono andare in cucina.
Le
donne devono stare zitte e andare in cucina.
Demonstration
Devono stare zitte, shut up and go to kitchen.
Go shut up and go to kitchen. Okay. So we are not so sure. Male circumcision is not so bad because it is cultural. Female circumcision is bad. Can I ask you?
No.
Female circumcision is bad because
I think it's in some cultures there is also the feminine circumcision.
Yes.
But I heard most about male circumcision in a cultural way.
Okay. Yes. Female circumcision.
They say, Juliet, also that. They say it depends on the case. It's not always bad, and only when it's done for medical reasons.
Okay. This is male genital mutilation, as some people call it. Okay. Okay, we start from there, but let me then take you through the case to give you an example, one very interesting example where one type of circumcision, female circumcision, was condemned as mutilation. And many people say, but male circumcision, I'm not even going to try. Is much worse than this. So, aspetti. Okay, let's do this. Okay, in 2015, 2015, dai, ho dimenticato tanto. Okay, in 2015, there was a case we call Maginus and Vaziri. This case. It was a case where 7 people were first arrested from the Dawoodi Bohra Muslim community. Dawoodi Bohra Muslim community is a community based in India, but in many parts of the world. So there were many Dawoodi Bohra Muslim people in New South Wales, in Sydney, just outside Sydney, and they were charged with female genital mutilation. After a long police investigation, only 3 people were charged. The mother, the midwife, come si dice?
Midwife è tipo la levatrice, l'ostetrica che l'ha aiutata.
Sì, ma non formale, it's not formal.
Come si chiama?
Midwife.
Sì.
Non ce l'abbiamo, il corrispettivo, sì.
Hai bisogno, avete bisogno questa. No, it's tipo inferma.
Infermiera.
Yes.
Ma non è professionista la midwife.
No, ma non professionista in Italia o in Australia, ma Dawoodi Bohra sì. And this is always a question of recognition. A question of the authority to do this. So, the mother, the midwife, obstetrica, and the community leader, a man, Mr. Vaziri, were charged. This was about a small cut. The Dawoodi Bohra have a practice which is a small cut, what we call a nick, like a, come si dice?
Piccolo taglio.
Piccolo taglio. Anche in Australia non abbiamo una frase esattamente per questo, perché piccolo taglio significa, in questo caso, mutilazione. Troppo. Okay, so, but this was the question. So, it was, and qua, ma là, un'altra cosa. So, a little cut when children, girls, are 7 years old. When they have 7 years, there is a little cut. A nick, we say, nick. And this piccola taglia was done with no blood. And these girls were examined 3 times, genital examination, 3 times. 1 time with a, come si dice, sonica ultrasound, come si dice?
La risonanza magnetica, l'ecografia.
Yes. 1 time with this, niente era trovato. Nothing was found. Nothing was found. No scar, nothing. Cosa? Ha detto? Cicatrice. Okay. It's like a language lesson for me. So now, but the only evidence was that one of the girls said she thought something had happened and she had a little bit of pain, dolore, but it went away. The pain went away. But in this case, the jury, it was a full case. It lasted for 10 days. It was a full case, and the jury accepted that this was mutilation. And it accepted this because the legislation, la legge in New South Wales, no mi scusa, in Australia we have criminal law for each different state, like Stati Uniti, but not entirely. We have a cover for the law, but in each state it is different. So, la legge in Australia, this is the New South Wales, Sydney, Crimes Act, Female Genital Mutilation, and it says this: a person who excises, cuts out, infibulates, avete sentito, you heard about this infibulation last week, infibulates or otherwise mutilates. Now, I can't translate otherwise mutilates because I can't understand it. Otherwise mutilates. ¿Qué cosa significa? What do you think otherwise mutilates could mean? You can, in English or Italian, any language is going to be confusing here. It could mean anything. Piccola taglia, più grande. We don't know. So this is the first case. So the judge, il giudicio, in this case, said, yes, this is a case of genital mutilation because of this definition in the World Health Organization. So this is, don't worry, this is the World Health Organization definition, very strong definition of female genital mutilation. There are 4 types. Within each type, there are many different, and there are many, many more. But this is one way of putting these in categories. But what he said was that it was type 4. This is type 4. This is all other harmful procedures to the female genitalia for non-medical purposes. For example, pricking, piercing, incising, scraping, and cauterizing. Type 4. Pricking, come Italia, it's like this. So I tried to translate these exactly for you, but maybe I'm interested in whether you see this like this. Perforazione, offrare. It's like this. Piercing. Is piercing like this? Is like this. Okay. Piercing, incisione, raschiatura, e cauterizzazione. That. So, piercing also. So, un'altra domanda. This is rhetorical. But you remember last week, they said there are 30 million girls at risk in the world of circumcision? Forare? Are they at risk of this? This would be the same. Okay. This would be the same. Female
So you
genital.
mean that when they say there are 30 millions of people at risk, they are at risk for one of the 4 different types?
They are at risk for
including just the piercing.
Yes, we don't say just.
I mean, because piercing, I think also about the piercing that you can have here or genital
piercing.
Yeah.
You have this in Italy, right? Genital piercing, yeah?
Do you consider the genital piercing like a mutilation? No, right? So, but I don't know if it's...
Yes, exactly. This is the point. I'm not being deliberately confusing. I'm trying to explain the problem. This is already an issue where female genital mutilation, as it is called, also includes this. This is called the World Health Organization. This is a very big authority. It has the definition of female genital mutilation. It includes piercing, but also this trick. So the judge, Judicial Johnson, said no, because it is type 4, and it is within the definition of the World Health Organization of female genital mutilation, therefore, this is mutilation. Therefore, this is mutilation. I want to go only quickly to something that this one. This was the evidence from the forensic doctor, the medico in the case, the expert medical doctor, independente, not for the defense, who examined the 2 girls, and she said this. I won't read it all, but you can have this quote later. There was no evidence of any scarring. Questa parola? Cosa? Questa. Yes, of any scarring, and the external genitalia appeared normal. Normale genitalia is confusing, but okay, why not? So it appeared normally. In particular, and then she goes on to talk about this, so non c'erano segni di cicatrici, that genitali esterni apparivano normali, okay? Però, what? And then she says, but, ma. It could have healed. So it could have happened, yes, but the blood supply is a lot in this area, so it could have healed. So something happened, there was no evidence. We call it a nick, epilotalia, but because it falls within category 4, tipo 4 of the World Health Organization definition, it is female genital mutilation. Now, who agrees? Who agrees that this was female genital mutilation? Okay. Now we have this. Nessuno, or you're a little scared? Let me check.
They're in trouble.
They're in trouble now.
I don't know.
I know. No, esattamente. Also, my students in Australia are in trouble right now. This moment, you say, no, ma cazzo fai? How did this happen? That we thought that this was female genital mutilation, and now, no. But surely not this, right? Not this.
I mean, you want to be sure about that, right?
You want to be sure.
You need to be sure about that.
You need to be sure. So when you say female genital mutilation is bad, okay, but what about this? Okay, so let's get back. Because what happened after this is that the courts had to be very sure. So the defense in this case appealed. Ha fatto come si dice, appello? Ha fatto appello. So the defense in this case appealed and said, no, really, this can't be true. This can't be true. And they said it because there was one comment from the judge who said mutilation is an injury to any extent. Mutilation is an injury to any extent. A little cut, but to any extent. I capito? It's difficult also in English, so in legal language.
Ad ogni modo.
Yeah?
Ad ogni modo.
Yes,
you
yes,
mean, like,
yes, yes, exactly. Okay.
independently of what kind of cut.
Independently of what kind of cut, but not dove. Questo è un altro cosa. Yes. So, independently, and the Criminal Court of Appeal said, the New South Wales Criminal Court of Appeal said, Mano, this is ridiculous. They didn't say this is ridiculous. Oh, that's a question. No, they said this is not right, and the judge gave directions to the jury which were wrong. They said, in fact, this is legal language, so I think you can understand the ordinary meaning of injury connotes injury or damage that is more than superficiale, più di superficiale. For mutilation to have occurred, it must be more than this. It's not enough. It's not enough. And the body part in question, this I like very much. This is very interesting. I like this one. This body part in question must be imperfect. For it to be mutilation, it must be rendered imperfect or irreparably damaged. This is the first philosophical question. What is a perfect body? What is a body that is undamaged? What is a body that stays perfect? In fact, it's a question to human rights, but okay. So he says, okay, an injury must be more, injury for it to be mutilation must be more. Okay. So that the judge, who said, misconstrued the meaning of mutilation. Now, there is a personal aspect to this story because these three people who were convicted in this time, this was 2018, 3 years after the first case. The mother spent, we say, she had a carceral sentence, carceral sentence in casa. She had to, with a bracelet on her leg. She could not leave the house except for a year, except to get her other children from the school. But she had a small child, 2 anni, another child, 2 years. So she would take her small child to pick up the children, and she ha chiesto the Office of Correction. She asked them if she could stop at a playground, come si dice, un
parchetto per giocare.
Parchetto per giocare, esattamente, for the 2-year-old, and they said 5 minutes per day. So also, this 2-year-old was in the house for a year and could not go out more than 5 minutes in the park every day. Triste, estrema. Per un anno. The community leader served 100 days in prison, prigione, in prison for this. The midwife also had detention domiciliare. She had domiciliare, yes. She was 72 years old at the time. Yeah. The mother lost her job. The father, who was a doctor, was he was sanctioned. He was sanctioned, yes, for this. And now they have moved out of Australia because of this. Yeah. So, triste estrema. So, after 2015, the appeal, but the sentenza, had been carried out. So, 2018, the Court of Appeal said, no, this is wrong. But, you think this is the end, but no. The prosecution in this case, a year later, appealed to the High Court of Australia. The High Court of Australia is like your highest court, yes? So this is the highest court in Australia had to decide, but what is a mutilation? What is a mutilation? So, this very question. Now, at this point, I want to take a moment to show you what one woman talks about in terms of her own experience of mutilation, and a discussion. She's having a discussion of a similar case in the Stati Uniti, which was with the Dawoodi Bohra Muslim community at the same time. This case stopped because the law could not accommodate this case, complicated Stati Uniti law, we don't care. But this case, at this time, the same time, in Stati Uniti, the same case was being heard. So I want to show you just a clip of a colleague of mine, Fwamba Amadou. So Fwamba Amadou is a professor in Sierra Leone at the moment, and she works with me a lot on this in an international group. Now she's very open about her own circumcision. She was circumcised at the age of 21 after living in the United States for a long time, and then went back to Sierra Leone to be circumcised at 21. So they speak in American accents. Maybe that's easier for you, but they speak very fast. So I'm going to just play it for a couple of minutes to show you this conversation where she was interviewed about this case with Tucker Carlson. Do you know who this person is? Okay. How do you make it go? Microsoft.
You just
press?
Director's testimony today mostly focused on Russia and his behavior during the election, but it was not the only topic. Director Comey also referenced the FBI's investigation of 2 physicians accused of illegally performing female genital mutilation on young girls in Detroit.
This past week, for the first time since Congress passed a statute making it a crime in the United States to engage in female genital mutilation, to mutilate little girls. It's been a felony in the United States since 1996. We made the first case last week against doctors in Michigan for doing this terrifying thing to young girls all across the country with our partners in the Department of Homeland Security.
I want to just stop for a moment for you to remember that this is the Dawoodi Bohra practice that he's talking about, this terrifying thing. It is the same, this little piccolotalia. Yes, it's exactly the same. He's talking about this. It was 22 cases in the United States of this thing.
We brought a case against 2 doctors for doing this to children.
Fwamba Amadou chose to undergo what she calls female circumcision as an adult. She's also an anthropologist, and in effect defends the practice of FGM, saying Western society is wrong to view it as inherently impressive. Dr. Amadou joins us tonight. Dr. Amadou, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Tucker.
So I'll concede this subject makes me so uncomfortable that I don't like to do segments on it.
Right.
But I also think it's really important because I think it's so horrifying that something like this is perpetrated on young girls as the father of young girls.
Right.
So you seem like a reasonable person and a well-educated person. It's amazing to me that anyone could defend this.
Okay.
On what grounds would you defend it?
So when you opened just now, you said that I defend FGM.
Yes.
And I don't defend FGM. I don't defend mutilation. I would never defend the mutilation of anyone. I don't identify with the term FGM, with the term mutilation.
Right.
I don't know anybody in my family who does, or my community. And from over 25 years of research I've done on the field, I would say the great majority of women who are affected by what I call female circumcision practices do not see themselves as mutilated. So I think we need to start interrogating how we use that terminology.
Okay. I almost don't want to specify what it refers to because it's upsetting.
I think we should.
But it's the removal of a kind of key female sex organ in a lot of cases and this is being done to girls who obviously can't give consent.
Okay. And
it affects them for life. That would be my perspective.
Right. So, Tucker, this is why I think we do need to have a discussion on what it is. Because when we use the term female genital mutilation, automatically a certain image comes to mind, an image that's really been put out there for over 30, 40 years in the media, in the mainstream media, and obviously through activist efforts and women's groups. It's the idea of the most horrific type of procedure, which is type 3. WHO classifies this as type 3 infibulation that involves the suturing and sewing up of the labia majora. This is a very rare procedure that is confined basically to a specific part of sub-Saharan Africa, the Horn of Africa. It makes up less than 10% of the entire prevalence of the procedures in sub-Saharan Africa and across various parts of the world. We need to understand that over 90% of what we call female circumcision involves what WHO classifies as types 1.
Right.
And that's divided into types 1A and B, and types 2, A and B as well. So, for instance, the Dawudi Bora case that has become quite talked about in recent weeks with the arrest of the doctor, the female doctor, Dr. Nargawala, I believe, in Michigan. Their community, their Shiite Muslim, quiet community here in the United States, their community performs first of all, they perform circumcision on boys. We'll get to that in a moment. And they perform type 1A circumcision, which is a nick right. of the prepuce, the foreskin of the clitoris.
Right. That is not actually what is illegal as far as I understand. What I understand is the removal of an entire portion of the female sex organ without the consent of the child. Now, you underwent this as an adult. There's a quantum difference between making a decision to do something like that and having that decision made for you that cannot be reversed as a child. That seems to me probably the worst thing you could do to a child.
Okay, so back to the case of the Dawudi Bora doctor who's now in prison waiting trial. She is accused, she's charged with FGM, mutilating 2 7-year-old girls. She performed NICS, type 1A, to the clitoris.
Yeah, I don't know that.
But it's really important because what's happened is it is true, and what's happened is that it's the activists that have actually made this, the term female genital mutilation they've conflated it with all these different
practices. Some of those activists are victims of the practice itself. Well, and we've interviewed them on this set, and they have said this has affected my life and my happiness and my ability to experience happiness in a profound way, and it's totally barbaric. And I guess I just don't buy the, hey, it's a different culture. Well, so is throwing widows on the pyre, and it's still wrong.
And I absolutely agree with you, Tucker, but there's one thing I want to correct. You said it removes a vital part of the female genital anatomy, all right? And is it okay if I actually say what that part is? Because there's a misconception about what actually, what these surgeries entail. There is no female circumcision procedure that removes the clitoris of a woman. It is absolutely impossible to remove a woman's clitoris without killing her. What is exposed is a tiny fraction of what is actually an extensive organ.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there, and just before we get...
You feel very uncomfortable.
Who? Louis? Yeah, he's very uncomfortable. Yes, yes, because Fwamba is formidable. So two points about this. The point she is making is that there is a misconception about where the clitoris is, and so people think it's just on the outside. Most women will know it's not at all. So it's more complicated. So this story about removing the sexual organ is a little bit exaggerated. So, but the other thing is she says it's the Dawudi Bora practice was type 1A. This was the argument in America that it was type 1A because when you perform a nick, a little cut, you remove some skin or not. This was the legal argument. So try and understand the fascinating issue, which is when you touch something and you make it bleed, is the blood removed? And this makes the difference between type 1 and type 4. So this is the details that had to be considered in terms of the High Court's case. So in Australia at this time, so I have this. In Australia, the High Court of Australia in 2019 said that actually, yes, this little cut, this little nick was a mutilation. This is a mutilation. And they said this because it did not have to be an injury beyond this cut, but because of where it was, because of sensitivity, that this was a mutilation. Now, a couple of questions come from this. If this is a mutilation, why isn't male circumcision a mutilation? If this is a mutilation, why isn't female genital cosmetic surgery a mutilation if you are taking things out? If this is a mutilation, why isn't gender affirmation surgery a mutilation? Now, I don't think any of it is a mutilation, let's be clear. What I think is the court could not consider these things, and in fact, there was an interesting moment, a moment in the court where one of the judges, 12 judges on the bench of the High Court, said, but what is a nick? And the defense said, it's a nick, like you do, like a little bit of a little cut, but nothing. And the judge said, like a shaving cut, like this, like you did before, like this, like a shaving cut. Maybe it's like a shaving cut, but it became not a shaving cut to your face. A shaving cut to the genitals is a different kind of cut. And I say, why did he measure his face, not his penis? Why did he measure his face, not other types of genital cutting? Okay. Now, to understand this, of course it would always take so long to talk about this. I want to give you a little bit of history in Australia for why this law came and why these things have come to be understood like this. So in Australia, in 1993, there was a case of 2 girls who were found to be infibulated in a child abuse case. Yes? So infibulation, which they've been talking about, you talked about last week, they were found to be infibulated, and the Australian society went crazy, absolutely crazy. Article after article after article in journal, like just everybody was talking about this in 1993. Now, maybe you don't remember, or maybe, well, don't remember, you weren't born probably, but in 1993, you had the Gulf War, the Kuwait War. And in Australia, we had a strong push then, a lot of racism, a lot of Islamophobia. Did you say this, Islamophobia? Mm-hmm. Yeah? A lot of Islamophobia. At the same time, we had a large amount of migrants coming from the Horn of Africa. Now, Australia is a very white-looking place at that time. And it changed. And it changed, and you saw women in hijab. You saw different faces that could not be understood by the broader white Australian community very well. So there was a lot of fear. Islamophobia, it was really very strong. So in 93 and 94, this became very pronounced, very obvious, a spectacle. It was everywhere. And then the Attorney General, we have an Attorney General, because we have a Queen, we still have the Queen. You have an Attorney General who is the head. The Procuratore Generale. Forse? Yeah, okay. And he said you must investigate this issue. But here is what happened. He put a group of experts together and they produced a document which was called the Family Law Council, Female Genital Mutilation, a Discussion Paper. And communities who worked on the practices, or doctors who were interested, or other people who wanted to comment, were given 2 months to respond. And it was only published in English, only in English. 2 months later, or in June 1994 of that year, the Family Law Council had another report which said female genital mutilation, a report to the Attorney General, and they put all this information together. But in those two reports, or the response to the first report, only two communities who actually had the practices or were involved in the practices responded, only two. And only one was published in the report, this from the Eritrean community in Australia, who said, because of the 2 months, because it was in English, that essentially prevented adequate community consultation from taking place. So the communities could not inform and had not informed the law about the practices, but the Family Law Council said it doesn't matter because the opinion in Australia is clear. So we will have legislation. At that time, so this is 1994, New South Wales had this report and they put their legislation in place. And this is why they have this term, anyone who excises, cuts out, infibulates, or otherwise mutilates, because they did not know what they were thinking about or looking at. Also, many of the communities in Australia at that time had decided to stop the practices. They had completely decided to stop it, but nobody listened to them. Nobody talked to them. Nobody was involved with the communities about what they thought. So you have the situation where this legislation in 2019, with no consultation, was then applied to the bodies of these two little girls. In the 2019 case with the High Court, they relied on that report almost exclusively. That report became how they could interpret what was done to these two little girls. It was quite fascinating. Now, within this legislation is a clause or a section, depending on what you call it. And this, within this legislation, this law, almost all around the world, there is this one exception. One exception. And we call it a clause. What do you call it? A section. Exception. In the law, that you would have a name for, I don't know the name here. So it is not an offence. It is not against the law to perform a surgical operation if that operation is necessary for the health of the person. Necessary for the health of the person on whom it is performed, and is performed by a medical practitioner. So this is the debate about what we had before, obstetrical.
If it's professional or not.
Is it a profession or not? A profession for who? Who says it is an authority, a medical practitioner or not? Yeah. If it is performed on a person in labour, who is, if you are not in gravidanza, when you are birthing, in gravidanza, dopo gravidanza c'è un bimbo, birthing, come si dice?
Il travaglio.
Yes. Okay, this is confusing. I need to write this down. Okay, if they have just given birth and you need to cut or you need to sew, then okay, you can do this. Or for sexual reassignment, gender affirmation surgery for transition, yeah? Then, and if it is performed only by a medical practitioner. So these three things are acceptable. But what is a healthy body? So if you say, because we said this before, a perfect body, a healthy body, when you decide to have a medical operation for cosmetic reasons, so if you have female genital cosmetic surgery, you can have this because it is for your mental health. Yeah, in Australia, maybe here too. Do you know? Yeah. If you need your genitals to look a certain way, bit to the left, bit to the right, bit smaller, then This is for your mental health because it makes you feel better about your body. Yeah? So your body, we say your mind articulates with your body. Okay, this translates roughly. So female genital cosmetic surgery can be performed because it is necessary for the health of the person. In 1994, the president of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists in Australia was asked, what does medically necessary mean? And he said, I quote, almost quote, he said, sometimes you have to trim the labia, trim, how to say trim like this, trim, okay, yes, a little cut, like this, you would say trim for the hair, little one, little, not the big one, not the, just a little one. Sometimes you would trim the labia, was it labia, labia majora, because you need to wear your jeans very tight. This is medically necessary. No, this doesn't translate, yeah? Because you want these tight jeans and you need to trim to make sure that, he said this. So this is one definition of medical necessity.
Who was this, the judge or the
president
doctor?
Of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists.
So a doctor.
A doctor, the most senior doctor at the time, he said this. For many other reasons, of course, as well. Sometimes there is more serious medical reasons, but for mental health, to have your body you want it to look like a certain way. Okay, so there is a second issue with the legislation. In determining whether an operation is necessary for the health of a person, only matters relevant to the medical welfare, to the health, to the good health of the person are to be taken into account. So, it is not a defense if it is a cultural practice. We said this about male circumcision before. It's not a defense if it's a cultural practice, and it's not a defense if it's a ritual. It's not a defense if somebody just believes you should have it done. Okay? But the second, it is not a defense to a charge, I will summarize this, if the person consents. So, okay, maybe we understand a 4-year-old can't consent. Maybe we understand that a 16-year-old can't consent. But actually, the legislation in Australia applies to adult women also. An adult woman cannot consent to having female genital mutilation, but she can consent to having female genital cosmetic surgery. What is the difference? There is one difference. Anyone?
Religious ritual.
Yes, maybe religious ritual. Yeah, yeah.
Cosmetic surgery is more Western, emancipatory perspective.
Yes, yes. Any of you think what the difference might be like that? More?
Perché vi fareste una surgery fisica per abbellirvi e non una piccola spuntatina di circoncisione? Perché una è più accettata dell'altra?
Hang on, I'll check if there's anything online. Oh, there's someone in the waiting room.
Ammetti.
Yeah?
Please click on Ammetti.
Where Ammetti? Where is it?
Follow.
Admitti. Yes, where is it? Oh, that one, scusa. The big one. So.
Dai, provate a dire la vostra, vorremmo parlare di questa cosa, se no non ci state a fare poi. Why do you think is more acceptable one and not the other? Ditelo anche in italiano se volete.
questione sociale e culturale. Cioè da noi socialmente è accettata la chirurgia plastica, mentre da loro no.
Da loro?
Where
da loro?
E dove vengono praticate determinate cose.
But in this case, queste determinate cose vengono praticate in Australia, non in Nigeria.
È una questione culturale.
Posso chiedere qualcosa? Do you not think that cosmetic surgery is cultural?
Secondo me è più sociale, una
È
questione
più sociale? There's a difference between something being cultural and social.
Sì, secondo me sì, sono due cose diverse.
Va. Vuole capire?
E quando una cosa è trasmessa culturalmente, a parte che comunque si parla di cose che vengono trasmesse dopo tanto tempo.
Piano, per favore.
Allora, culturale secondo me dipende non tanto, cioè da determinate cose, usanze, che vengono trasmesse da persona a persona in tanto tempo. La società invece è una cosa, a parer mio, un po' più temporanea e che cambia molto più facilmente che una cosa culturale.
Ok. Can I ask if I understood, forse ho capito bene, that do you not think that the idea of a beautiful genital, a beautiful clitoris, a beautiful genitalia, velata genitalia, is transmitted from your mother or from your culture for years and years and years? Non una legge, ma...
No, quello è più una società che te lo trasmette, non una cultura.
Interesting. Okay. In Australia, we would not make the distinction between cultural and social. These things are the same. But I can understand. Posso capire?
Cioè, secondo me è diverso.
Sì, ho capito. Yes, there are, but I'm sure it is like this. In Australia, we would say you have to make this argument very slowly because the difference between culture and social involves, of course, law and ideas that come from many places to say, okay, this is a cultural practice, for example. Okay, so, well, I'll leave that there and say there has been now a number of examples in Australia where women, black women from Horn of Africa, have asked cosmetic surgeons to work on their genitals, to fare qualcosa on their genitals, and the cosmetic surgeons say, non posso, I can't, because it will be female genital mutilation. The answer is colour. It is an issue of racism, quite clearly. So, there are many examples I can give you of this, but let us move to the next point. The difference between how we think of what is a body, what does it need, what should it have, is this imagination of a body that can choose outside culture or outside sociality. I need to understand the difference. But to outside this, you can choose something outside this. But of course, all our choices are made through this. All our choices are made in relation to our society and our culture. So there is a term, I don't know how well you are familiar with gender affirmation discussions. There is a term that we use in the law and in Australia generally about gender dysphoria. Hai capito? Gender dysphoria. Dysphoria di gender, yeah. When your body does not articulate, we say, okay, when your body is not the body that you have for your mind. Yes? This is a very odd way of describing this, but yeah. So when you think you are something and you want your body to fit this, your body does not look like what you want it to look like or what you think it should look like. So this is an issue of gender, because people decide, as you would have this discussion, I'm sure here, I know here, people decide to transition male to female, female to male, with the idea that their body does not fit the culture, the imagination that they have of that body. But that imagination is cultural. How you imagine yourself, a woman, is cultural. For example, if I could, I don't think your hair grows faster than men's hair, but all the women in the front row have long hair. Not you.
Maybe. I would love.
Yeah. This is not natural. This is cultural. This is about a body fitting to a particular idea of that gender. Yes? So, when people have gender dysphoria, their bodies do not fit with the cultural idea of that gender, not the biological idea, maybe, but with the idea of a cultural gender. So we say gender dysphoria is cultural dysphoria. So then why isn't female circumcision a matter or a concern for cultural dysphoria, or gender dysphoria, one might say? Why isn't the body that wants to, needs to, believes it should fit in culture an issue of medical necessity? Why isn't gender affirmation surgery the same as female genital circumcision? To produce your genital is also to produce your gender, to have it fit in your culture, to have it fit within your particular world. So one can say, this is the third part, of course, of the discussion, that these ideas are not separate from culture, not separate from an idea that a body, that when we say that a body is perfect, when we say that a body is natural, when we say that a body is not damaged, we are talking about a cultural imagination of that body. To damage a body is to make it not fit that imagination. And so the final point, male circumcision, so simple. When men are circumcised within Jewish cultures and also within Islam, it is to make their gendered body fit within that culture, to produce that body as a man in that culture. Why would this not be the same for female circumcision?
And also, usually it is made when they are child.
Yes,
right?
when they are child.
It's not that they wait until
There's no
18,
consent.
as the guy was saying. You know? So because they are children, they cannot decide.
Yes.
But not even in the Jewish or Islamic society. I mean, the children, they don't decide.
Yes.
Because they are like 6.
Yes.
9.
Yes. It is the idea that you decide on your gender or your culture at 18. You don't. You are produced through this. Okay.
Yeah.
That is me. You want? Right?
Yeah, I would love to leave the floor to Professor Set. And so maybe after if you have like discussion, then we open to questions or complaints.
Complaints. I love complaints.
Of course.
Change my mind, please.
Maybe Rafaela, you can go there to talk so that you are in the
I
camera.
would like to show you our criminal code.
Yes. Please.
You go online. This is in Italy.
This in Italy is the offense of female genital mutilation, and it was inserted in our criminal code in 2006. And we can find all the elements you showed before.
Yes.
it's a crime if there is any reason, therapeutic reasons, ragioni in assenza di esigenze terapeutiche, mutilation, there is the word of mutilation. Our law describes which is a mutilation. Is a yes, l'escissione e l'infibulation. And other mutilation.
Yes.
Other practices.
Yes, with the same effect.
Sì.
But there is another paragraph with this details. Other damage to the genitalia, different from the one of the paragraph 1. From that derives an illness in the body or in the or a mental illness. It's a crime, so it's punished. It's punished.
But again, here say di lieve entità, as you were saying, like mild entity.
The punishment is diminished if the damage is lieve, is light. Yes, soft. And the punishment is raised if the victim is a young girl. Under the
minore, yes.
minorenne. Minor
18.
under 18. So in our criminal code we can find the problematic, the elements you explained before.
It's a franchise like McDonald's.
Yes.
Global franchise.
Yes, and we had an experimentation before this law. We had an experimentation in a hospital in Florence.
Lucrezia Catania. The doctor was Lucrezia Catania.
Careggi, Ospedale Careggi.
Yes.
She tried to transform this practice in a regular practice, reducing the risk for the female to have a problem because of operation made without professionals.
Yes.
But after this law, it was impossible to continue with this experimentation.
Yes.
So this law was made because of it?
Because of that?
No. This law was made because of the situation of migration, because of the situation of female victims of gender-based crimes. And before this law, the problem was known, and some doctors tried to have experimentation in order to mix up health and ritual elements, but this law forbid this experimentation, and now the only way you can imagine to manage this problem is prevention.
Yes.
Now, so it's just to explain you, but how our law works.
Yes.
And the other problem is that all this crime related to migration elements are in the big chapter of culturally motivated offenses. And this is a big problem to understand where the culturally motivated event becomes a crime or not.
Yes.
So it's just to give you some explanation of how this phenomenon works in Italy.
Yes, it's very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask, because to explain that, because that's, you said, is this che dello stesso tipo of damage,
dello
the
stesso
same
tipo
type
of like a mutilation.
like a mutilation.
Yes.
What is like a mutilation?
Mutilation practices are featured
this
this
like
one,
this.
this light, and also other damage which provoke menomation to sexual functions.
Menomation, okay. Una cosa interessante, importante per capire, everybody must understand this. In some cultures, they perform circumcision, types of circumcision, to enhance sexual function, to encourage sexual function. That it is always about this stopping sexual function is a myth, or it's not. Sometimes, but not all times. And in fact, my colleagues from the Dawudi Bora say it is actually a problem because it enhances sexual function. So you cannot ride a motorbike because you will orgasm.
Yes.
Yes. So my interest is, so there is a, so
two paragraphs difference.
Yes.
This is mutilation.
Yes, but one is about when it causes the lo stesso tipo malattie nel corpo e nella mente.
Practices from which derive an illness in the body
or the mind.
On the mind.
But an illness in the mind. This is
a damage, mental damage.
But what is mental damage? So
yes.
we have this conversation, for many conversations about this, because some women only feel mental damage after they have been told they are mutilated. So in some societies, they have come to a doctor, a psychologist, a psychotherapist, to say, I cannot have good sexual relations with my husband. And then the doctor finds out that actually he's very bad. The husband is very lazy, but the woman thinks it's because of circumcision. Actually, it's because of her husband. So, and this is a common confusion because, of course, often sexuality is complicated. So, if you tell somebody you cannot have an orgasm because you are circumcised, then actually how they relate to their sexuality,
must be proved by
forensic
doctor.
No, but it can't be proved. You can't prove, that sexuality is so complicated. So So yes. So okay. And
in this case, the punishment is reduced.
Yes, that's very interesting.
In relation to the first paragraph, because the sanction for the practice of the first paragraph are the prison from 4 to 12 years.
You definitely get prison from 4 to 12 years. Yes. After 12 years, less prison.
No, the punishment required is from 4 to 12 years.
In Australia, 21 years.
Yes, I read. Yes, it's amazing. Yes, it's amazing.
It has never been, but okay.
Yes. And the cases related to the second paragraph are punished with soft punishment. Prison from 3 to 7 years.
Okay.
Because it's a damage, it's a minor damage. I don't know how to explain it.
Yes. No, okay. Very interesting. How to judge when it is a minor damage and when it is a larger damage?
The larger damages are this one.
Yes.
3.
But anything
other mutilation like Australian law are in the second paragraph.
Yes, okay. But anything that is like those types.
Yes.
Okay.
But
No.
the acts of the second paragraph should provoke a illness in the body, on the mind.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's not a crime.
Yes, okay. But the first paragraph does not require illness in the mind.
No.
It is, I see. Interesting.
Because
we don't have this separation.
It's above. It's
Yes.
above all.
It's above all. So, for example, Fuan by Amadou, so
Yes.
who was in this, so she has had excision. She's very public about this. She's had excision, and it wouldn't matter if because she doesn't care when she says she's fine, but she wouldn't. That would not be important. That she feels fine.
Yes.
Is not important. Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
So
So that's a comparison.
It's a comparison,
yes.
yeah. But you have exceptions also, which are for the health of the person.
Yes,
and
exception.
Do they say gender modification surgery or just?
I'd like to ask you something about
feminine genital. Also, this crime is directed only if the victim is a female.
Yes.
A woman.
Yes. So this is the.
It's written.
Yes.
Organi genitali femminili.
Femminile.
It's written.
It's very interesting because do you have any other laws in Italy which are only about men or women? Any other laws?
No. Some aggravated circumstances for the pregnancy.
Yes, okay.
maybe forced wedding.
Forced wedding?
Yes, il matrimonio. No.
No, because
No, matrimonio forzato per tutti e due. È neutra la legge per il matrimonio forzato.
Okay. It's only the only one.
Yeah,
So this,
yes, in my mind, I think yes.
This was the same. So this is what I said last week, because in a couple of cases, so one, this Dr. Tatao Kamu in Kenya, she went to the Constitutional Court of Kenya and she said this law is discrimination.
Yes.
It is discrimination because men can be circumcised and women can't. But you say, and
I
so
check, ma.
yeah,
I check, but
Yeah.
no, it's a person.
it's a person.
Forced marriage is
A person.
A person.
It's very interesting. How do you decide, that it has to be?
I don't have. I didn't have the time to search for the report before the promulgation of the law.
Yeah.
I didn't have any time, but it is interesting. If you are interested,
There must be a report.
I can search for you.
Yes, I went and
Yeah,
translate.
because I'm asking, of course this kind of law is because of immigration,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Or is because, in Australia it was 1993 or 4, I don't know if it either.
2006.
2006. Before there was no law about that.
No, before I understood in Italy, not the law, but it's the same in Australia and in every country. You could use the law for assault. You could use
lesioni
the grievous,
personali.
lesioni. So
Yes.
and for grievous bodily harm, abbiamo
Yes.
this more
Yes.
serious. You could also use child abuse, whatever your legislation is for child abuse. You could use these laws, but this is a very interesting fact because around the world, everybody said the same. You could use these
Yes.
laws, but we want to send the phrase a clear message.
Yes.
A clear message
Yes.
that this is worse. That this is terrible. This particular practice
Yes.
is bad. So this chiaro is this.
Yes.
We want to
The
be clear.
same things happened with the stalking legislation. Before stalking legislation, before the
could-
criminal code, we sentenced for lesioni personali,
Sì.
for minaccia,
Sì.
threat, but there
Yeah.
wasn't a particular crime.
Yes.
So in 2009, a legislation for prosecute the stalking acts was promulgated.
Yes, abbiamo anche. Yes, we have this. Yes,
Yes.
Stalking became
Yes.
a special
And
crime.
this happened before Convenzione di Istanbul.
Ah, sì?
Yes. 2006,
Yeah.
Convenzione di Istanbul is 2011.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. Most of the legislation in the world was in 1995, 96, and 98. So also, sorry, but the United States, the United Kingdom, so UK, had this legislation in 1985, and then they changed it in 2013 to send a clear message. Yeah, because they had circumcision in the title, they changed it. Yeah. Yeah. So.
But now to conclude, may I ask you something? I mean, I can ask you both.
Yeah.
If you are, because it reminds me, in this case, is something that we, as like the white nation, as Australia is the white nation, right? In terms of law for immigration, and also, I mean, we are in Europe or United States. I mean, the problem is how this is related to immigration and how also it's related with the wider idea of human rights. Because of course, before immigrants come to Australia or Italy, there was an issue also like in Ethiopia or in other places, right? And in this, I'm also wondering how like our Western European hegemonical perspective in terms also of maybe feminism, in order to free the other people, in order to emancipate them. How much do you think it is important in this?
So the idea, I think, actually, that female, when in 1982 was a very serious feminist movement led by very white feminists who went to Africa, anthropologists who went to Africa, and they said, these women are oppressed. These women are kept in this way, and they used the term mutilation for the first time. Before it was circumcision or whatever in their culture, so they used the term mutilation, and they said this must stop. But the way they did this is to try and say, not only is it bad, but their cultures are patriarchal. Their men want this. The problem is for women and all these things. So in many ways, it was about making a hegemonic narrative that the women over there are very oppressed and we are becoming more free. Yeah. Now, when in many of those cultures, when they come to different countries now and they bring their law, they feel very oppressed by the Western law, I think, by the Western law. So you have this problem of how do they live their cultural lives, their own lives, within a Western system. In Australia, this is a bigger question maybe than it is here, I'm not sure. Because in Australia, because Indigenous law has to be thought about in relation to white law, then we must think how every law is different. Indigenous laws have an authority, of course. They have a strong authority because, I'm not sure how much this is understood here, but because Indigenous nations, Indigenous people in Australia were the first people, so their law, we say, what did we do? We crushed their law. And now we must think, no, we must try and bring this back. But if we bring this back, why not other practices of law like this? If all laws are valid of all societies, how do we have one law on top of another? So, for example, I mean, an important way to think about this is in some Indigenous nations, we call them nations, not communities, yeah? In some Indigenous nations, they perform law where young men at the age of 12 or 13 have their front teeth removed. No, it's good. No, I'm kidding. No, so they have their front teeth removed, and they have they have their penis flayed. Can you translate that?
No.
It's it's a circumcision, but it's a cut right along I have to draw it. No, it's like it's right along the inside of the penis and opened.
Ah.
Hai capito? Slade.
Capito, ma non
Yeah?
so il
You can
nome.
try to write there to see an image, maybe.
E così dopo arriva la postale
if you
perché
Google
cercano
this,
cose
you will see.
pornografiche, lascia stare.
Yes, it's dangerous. My work is very dangerous like this. Once you start, you've read, oh, what's that? No, I don't want to know. So, but this is indigenous law.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you say, well, you can't do this, then it's like another genocide, you know, to stop the cultural practices of indigenous people after we have destroyed. So a male circumcision for Jewish people is like this too. You can't say male circumcision must be removed, yeah? You can't say this in Europe. You can't say this at all. You shouldn't say, you know, because it's a cultural practice associated with an important part, yeah. Also in Islam, so an important fact perhaps is there is no culture that circumcises women that does not also circumcise men. No culture. None. All the anthropologists will tell you, none. It is always male and female circumcision together. So, but you can't say that male circumcision can't happen because it is destroying a very strong and important cultural practice. But why not this? Why is it different?
It's like if you want to forbid the baptism or comunione for, I mean, maybe Italians.
Yes, or forbid
Catholic
coffee.
people
You'll be
around.
destroyed, yeah. You can't. To remove this cultural practice is an act of genocide, we could say. In Australia, sorry, about that one. So, but if that is true, then why not this? If that is true, that you must have male circumcision, that you must have indigenous law which does this, then why not female circumcision? And it's not an easy question. It's not an easy question. I don't say we should have female circumcision. It's wonderful, everybody, let's do this. I don't say this. What I say is we must be able to have the conversation. And we cannot have the conversation when you have cases like that, which is so stupid. You know, so, I mean, really, I don't want to say the High Court is so stupid, but really the High Court was so stupid. How can you say that that is mutilation? But of course it was political.
Certo.
Of course, yeah. So, yeah.
Certo.
So,
È da notare quando è stato la nostra legge è stata promulgata sotto questo governo che aveva tutta una serie di caratteristiche politiche che possono andare insieme
sì.
a questo discorso.
Sì, yeah. Importante, sì.
There are questions, comments?
Okay,
Tom,
I can ask you that.
Because in 5 minutes, no more, we close. So if you have questions, also Tom, please, because otherwise then we go. You want to say something to complete?
I want to ask the same question. Who thinks female genital mutilation is bad? Do you still?
Who changed her mind after this 1 hour and a half? Did you change your mind? I mean, you changed something, or like when you arrived, you have an idea and now you have the same idea?
I think it's not bad in general, but it depends on the case.
Yeah.
You have to analyze each case.
Yes.
I think it should be a matter of consent. If it's something that an adult woman or an adult man in case of male circumcision wants to go through genital surgery, I think they should be able to do. I think the question should be more about whether kids should be, whether it should be legal or not for them to go through an operation because of the parents' consent.
Yes, okay. Do you say the same, a question only because about transitional surgery, genital affirmation surgery, that the person has to be an adult, a consent? Yeah, okay. Also for hormones?
Yes.
They have to be 18?
Yes.
Because legge qua, what is it? What is the age for hormones to change your hormones here?
No.
In Australia, you can have hormonal change, so the hormones to take.
Maybe 16.
60?
Maybe.
So
16 or sure 18.
In Australia, it is you can do this before puberty.
Oh.
Yeah, it's changed, and it's because if you didn't take the hormones, then your body is, we say, irreparably damaged. It is not once you have hormones, not this, but once your body has hormones that is wrong for you, your body is damaged from your own hormones. Yeah. So yes, I understand. And Fuambai Amadou is very clear about this. She says, yes, why not? Let's make it possible for adult women to consent, because otherwise, why can you consent to cosmetic surgery and not a cultural practice that surgery, medication, depends what word you use, but why not? Yeah.
Is cosmetic surgery only for wealthy people?
For healthy?
Wealthy
rich
people.
Yeah, it's very expensive. It depends, because if they can say it's medically necessary with a doctor, sometimes the doctor can do it through the state health system. Yeah. And also cosmetic surgery, even for beautiful, for the relations of beauty or health are very confusing here, but can be as young as 11, 12, 13, very young. Yeah. Yeah. Because all this discussion now has changed. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember, like a few years ago, I used for, several years, a book by Fatima Mernissi. You know her?
Mm-mm.
She was, she died like a few years ago, but she was like a Moroccan sociologist. She worked with Pierre Bourdieu, and she was from Morocco, but she was teaching around the world. And there is a book which is very interesting, that is translated in Italian also, is Harem. And she talked about harem, how it changed the idea of harem if you are in the Maghreb or if you are in Europe. Because for Maghreb, she say like harem was a sort of prison, while in Europe looks like, if you put harem, I remember that period, a proposal they govern, if you write harem in Google, comes Berlusconi and the bunga, come si chiamava? And so but era molto interessante questo libro, perché faceva tutta una discussione molto interessante. Alla fine lei diceva, alla luce della mia esperienza di marocchina, che ho vissuto anche a New York, in Europa, così, mi chiedo se è davvero più mutilante dover andare in giro con l'hijab o essere una donna occidentale che, come dire, subisce quella che Pierre Bourdieu chiamava la violenza simbolica, per cui, come dire, il tuo corpo anche a 50 anni, a 60 anni deve essere bello, giovane, in palestra, la dieta, il tacco, la minigonna, la chirurgia estetica. E lei concludeva dicendo, alla fine io mi sento, come dire, molto più libera andando in giro con la mia 54 e l'hijab che non, come dire, con la minigonna e il tacco a spillo. Ed è un libro molto interessante perché, ripeto, riproduce un po' questo dilemma, no? Su qual è la violenza simbolica iscritta nel corpo dell'altro a seconda di chi legge. Ed è...
Ma collegato a questo c'è anche questo. Sara Farris, il femonazionalismo, cioè il razzismo nel nome delle donne, che è un approccio tipicamente della destra politica che finge, cioè che fa misure che sembrano proteggere la donna e venire in aiuto ai diritti della donna in modo che la donna raggiunga le pari opportunità come gli uomini, ma in realtà è un altro modo per dire stai zitta e vai in cucina.
Okay, we wish to thank Juliet for this seminar. Very, very challenging and useful. I think that we will have food for thinking and discussing also in the next seminars and class. So thanks, Juliet, and bye-bye to all the participants.